Hey, good morning, Hope City. My name is Connor.
And my name's Brett, and we're so glad that we're with you guys this morning.
It's really good to be here. I am warm inside. I hope you are too, because if you didn't know, it's 1 degree out. And
yeah, it's really cold.
Driving
really
in this
cold.
morning was very frigid. So I'm glad that we get to do church online, that we get to stay warm and stay inside. And so we're so glad you're here. We want to connect with you. Morgan Luce in the house, Jessica Blevins, Jamie, what is up? How can we connect, and how can they connect with us?
Yeah, absolutely. If you guys head over to experiencehope.city/connect, you'll find our online connect card, and that will be a great way for you to take some time to just fill that out. Drop prayer requests, mark if you would like to serve on our online team, but for us to get to know you guys a little bit better, especially in times like today where we're stuck inside, that like face-to-face interaction isn't happening. Take some time to fill that out, because we want to get to know you guys a little bit better. It's been a morning where like our online crew and sometimes our like in-person crew is actually getting to interact. So like that's
it's
awesome.
A really unique morning. Not off. It's been a couple months since we've had just church online, and so I'm excited because, like you said, we get to see our entire body of people represented, and so it really is important that you not just observe this morning, but you connect. And I want to challenge you this morning, Rhonda Osborne. Hey, good to see you. But I do want to. I want to challenge all of you to engage with the chat. Would you talk to each other? Would you interact during the message? Pam, what is up? You're already starting. I love that. Be like Pam and Cliff. Just chat it up because it is good. It really it makes this morning so much more engaging, and we get to see our full representation of people, which is
absolutely
awesome. And you can sign up to serve, whether you want to serve physically or you want to serve online. You can mark that. It's a really easy way for you to jump in and take your next step here at Hope City. And so I do want to make you guys aware too, our family ministry team has put together some awesome content. So if you have kiddos or students, they are putting out some content today that is specific for 5th and 6th grade, 7th and 8th, 9th and 10th, 11th and 12th, as well as our elementary. And that'll be on their Instagram pages, which if you don't follow and you have kids in that age group, you need to, because they're putting out content all the time, and it's awesome. And so if you have kiddos, go to our City Kids Instagram and check it out, follow it, and make sure you see their content today, because I know that they've worked really hard to create some awesome, engaging content for your kids, as well with our students. Go to Hope City Students on Instagram, and they're putting out a video just after this gathering for you students. And so we love you guys. We're so glad you're here. It's going to be awesome. Autumn, what is up? Good to see you. Anna, also good to
Kylie,
see you.
Good morning. I saw your message as well.
Kylie's on there. And so, hey, it is a unique morning, and so we want to also make sure that you have the opportunity to partner with what God is doing here at Hope City like you do physically. And so, Brett, how can they give?
Yeah, you can head over to our app, or you can head over to our website at experiencehope.city/give. And it's a great opportunity, like Connor said, to just really dive in and connect with what God is doing here. And you can actually give them a little bit more information about that.
Yeah, you can actually text to give as well. And so if you're going, man, I've never given online, or I don't know what that looks like. I usually write a check and drop it in the boxes. All you got to do is text the number below, and you can give, which is super easy, and continue to be a part of growing Hope City, not only in Joplin, but all over the country, as we talk about online life groups and as we talk about your impact going further than ever before, that we're watching that happen as our online campus grows, and it even allows us to have this ability this morning to have online church and be inside on a day where it's 1 degree out, right? And you guys would all be miserable walking in here, and the roads are terrible. And so, man, stay home, stay warm, because, man, it's going to be an awesome morning, because we're starting week 2 of our series called Forged, and Pastor Charlie's actually preaching this morning, and I love Charlie. He is one of the funniest people that I've ever met, and I don't know if he does it intentionally or unintentionally, but he is so much fun to be around. He's just a joy, and so I'm so excited for you guys to get to hear from him. And he's talking about inadequacy this morning. And I don't know about you, but I know for me, there are so many moments in my life where I feel inadequate. And so today, man, I want to challenge you, man, turn off all of the distractions this morning, and would you just settle in? And we're going to sing some songs here in a moment. We're going to worship. And I know for some of you guys who worship physically, this might be a weird shift. Would you just close your eyes and open your hands and just praise? And would you just would you just sit still for a moment and let God prepare you for what he's getting ready to do this morning through Charlie's message and through the rest of our worship? Let's go ahead and head in for worship.
Welcome to Hope City Church, where we believe no matter where you are in life, we're all in the same boat. We all have a story, and no matter what you've done or where you have been, we're all a work in progress. Every Sunday, we gather together, not as individuals, but as a family to worship and discover the hope that is offered to us through Jesus Christ. As a church, we will always choose to dig beneath the surface and discover how the Bible gives us a better way to do life. We build relationships with the intent to foster transparency because we're all a work in progress. We know growth can't happen without putting our faith into practice. So growing means going. We will choose to not settle for spiritual complacency, but to continually step out in faith. We will pursue the grace and truth God has for our lives in order to experience spiritual healing. We refuse to let the walls of this building be the only place we experience the transformational love of Jesus. So we take the hope that he brings into our communities, our families, our schools and workplaces. Hope City exists to help people experience Jesus in a way that will change their lives and will impact generations to come. The hope that Jesus brings is not just for you and it's not just for me. This hope is for everyone.
Hey, welcome to Hope City. We're going to lift our voices and sing songs this morning and remind ourselves of the faithfulness of our God. So come on, let's sing together. When all I see is the battle, you see my victory. When all I see is a mountain, you see a mountain moved. And as I walk through the shadows, your love surrounds me. Yes, it does. There's nothing to fear now, for I am safe with you. So when I fight, I'll fight on my knees with my hands lifted high. Oh God, the battle belongs to you, and every fear I'll lay at your feet, and I'll sing through the night. Oh God, the battle belongs to you. Hey. And if you are for me, who can be against me? For Jesus, there's nothing impossible for you. Come on, we sing. When all I see are the ashes, you see the beauty. When all I see is the cross, God, you see an empty tomb. Yeah, yeah. So when I fight, I'll fight on my knees with my hands lifted high. Oh God, the battle belongs to you, and every fear I'll lay at your feet, and I'll sing through the night. Oh God, the battle belongs to you. An almighty fortress, you go before us. Nothing can stand against the power of our God. And you shine in the shadows, you win every battle. Nothing can stand against the power of our God. Come on, your almighty fortress. Yes, you go before us. Nothing can stand against the power. And you shine in the shadows. You win every battle. Nothing Then you came along and you put me back together. In every desire is now satisfied here in your love. Come on, we remind ourselves of this truth today. Oh, there's nothing better than you. There's nothing better than you, Lord. There's nothing. Nothing is better than you. Oh, it's true. And I'm not afraid to show you my weakness, my failures and flaws. Lord, you've seen them all, and you still call me friend. Come on, this is good news. That the God of the mountain, He's the God of the valley. Yeah. Oh, and there's not a place your mercy and grace won't find me again. Oh, there's nothing better than you. There's nothing better than you. There's nothing, oh no, nothing is better than you. Oh, there's nothing better than you. There's nothing better than you, Lord. There's nothing, nothing is better than you. Come on, this is who our God is today. We sing. You turn mourning to dancing. Hey. You give beauty for ashes. You turn shame into glory. You're the only one who can. Remind yourself today. You turn mourning to dancing. You give beauty for ashes.
Hey, welcome back, guys. What an awesome morning of worship it's been already. If you haven't yet, I want to encourage you to fill out that Connect card because we want to connect with you this week. It's really important. With us all being online, we want to make sure we still get to connect and we get to be praying for you this week, and that's the best way to do that. Just go to experiencehope.city/connect to fill that out, or go to the app or our website. It's super easy, but we really do want to connect with you. You can also give online this morning, which is at experiencehope.city/give, which is really easy to go to as well. But man, I'm excited because this morning Pastor Charlie is going to kick off week 2 of our series talking about inadequacies, and man, I think he's going to do an incredible job. And I'm so excited for you guys to hear from him this morning. Let's head in and see what he has to say.
Well, like Brett and Connor said, even though the weather's pretty crummy outside, we are so excited that we get to worship together online. My name's Charlie. I am one of the pastors here at Hope City, and we are continuing our series called Forged. Today, we're going to be hanging out in Luke chapter 4. So if you have your Bibles with you or your iPad or phone, jump over to Luke chapter 4. Well, we can't escape it. The commercials and ads, they won't let us forget it. Even the weather and the ice tried to cancel it. But it came. Somehow or other, it came just the same. Happy Valentine's Day. Today is Valentine's Day, and when Cody asked me to preach, I immediately looked at the calendar, and I put 2 and 2 together. The reason he asked me to preach today is simple. I'm the most romantic guy on our staff. I think that's why. I don't need a holiday to tell me to love my wife, right? Wife, sorry, I did not get you a gift today because I tried to, show you love the rest of the year. But if Siri could still remind me when our anniversary is, that'd be great. This past week, my oldest son, Mitt, celebrated his 7th birthday. And I don't know what birthdays are like at your house, but we make birthdays a big deal. One of the things that we do at our house is that if it's your birthday, you get to pick what we're going to have for dinner. And 7-year-old Mitt decided that we were going to eat sushi and hot dogs. That's an interesting combination, isn't it? Well, I'll never forget the first time that I met that little dude. The day that he was born, 7 years ago, and I was standing in a hospital, and I remember my wife. It was a Sunday because, of course, a pastor's kid would be born on a Sunday to mess things up. And we're sitting in the hospital, and my wife has been in labor for a long time. Pretty soon, the doctor comes in and says, "I'm sorry, we're going to have to move her to C-section. We're going to have surgery. We're going to have to get him out of there because it could be dangerous." And I remember walking to the room where this was going to happen. They told me to wait outside to put on some scrubs. And I was standing there, and it hit me. It was that feeling of, I can't do this. I have no idea what I'm doing. Here I am, a 25-year-old man who is barely a good enough husband, and now I'm supposed to be a dad? And then I started thinking, okay, in the Bible, God is often referenced as father. And so now I'm Mitt's father. Oh no, I am going to be the closest representation to God to my son, and I am ill prepared to do that. I am not prepared. I am inadequate. And I remember the nurse coming out and saying, "Mr. Landis, you ready to meet your boy?" We walk into the room, and I take a big breath, and 5 minutes later, we hear a cry. And I see Mitt for the very first time, and the first words out of my mouth, I'm not lying, were, "He looks just like George Costanza from Seinfeld." I remember my wife, she started to freak out. The nurse leaned over and said, "Honey, I promise you, he looks adorable." Inadequacy, deficient, don't measure up, insufficient, however you want to say it, all of us struggle with that feeling of not being good enough. You walk into a gym, and of course, the strongest man in the world is doing bench press or doing some other awkward, weird lift that you've never seen before. Maybe you're studying for an exam, and you automatically begin to question your decisions for your future. You're scrolling through your phone, and you're seeing everyone else's life, and you can't help but think that you should be farther along. You should be farther along in your career. You should be farther along in your relationships. Maybe you want to be the best mom that you can be, but what happens is that you feel like you're always behind on your to-do list, that things are just piling up just like the laundry basket. You want to be a great dad, but you find yourself losing your temper with the limited time you even feel like you have with your kids. Maybe you really want to enjoy life with somebody, but you're still single and you can't help but think, and it whispers in the back of your mind, I must not be good enough. We've all been there before, having that nagging feeling of, man, I'm not enough. And if you're in the Midwest right now, it's just like this cold, disgusting weather. It just won't go away. But I have good news. The good news is that we don't have to settle with our insecurity. God doesn't want you to be a mediocre mom or a guilt-ridden husband or a second-guessing leader or a fear-crippled Christ follower. That's not what he has for our lives. And in this Forge series, we are discovering what does it look like to deepen and to strengthen our faith so that we don't live with thoughts of inadequacy or insecurity, but what does it look like to live a life of confidence? To understand that what Jesus has for us is what's best. Knowing that our feelings of inadequacies, it might be the beginning, but it should not be the end. And today we're going to see that Jesus clearly and powerfully states this in Luke chapter 4. So let's dig in. Luke chapter 4, verse 14 says this. Jesus returned to Galilee in the power of the Spirit, and news about him spread through the whole countryside. Now I want to stop right here and go back to last week when Cody kicked off our series. And Cody talked about when Jesus was forged, his faith was forged, when the moments of life are turned up, when the heat is turned up, Jesus, he did not escape, but he leaned into those moments. And he allowed God to forge his life, his character, and his faith. And like Jesus, if we're willing to lean in, God will do three things for us. God says that he will give us our identity, that he will remind us that God has so much more for us than what's right in front of us, that he'll develop our faith, and the best part, that he starts to display his power in our lives. And although the process started much sooner for Jesus, in the Bible, we actually only have about 3 years of this forging process of his life. And it wasn't a one-time deal in the desert for Jesus, but it was a lifetime journey. And if Jesus had to continue to forge his faith and his character, how much more do we need to realize that this process, it's going to be a lifelong process. God will always continue to work in our lives and refine our character if we allow him. And this morning, I want to spend our time together looking at how to live confidently in the forge. We're going to look at how to live confidently in the forge. Jesus was able to live with confidence, and that confidence isn't just for him. The good news is that God wants you and I to have this confidence as well. And since this forging process, it is a marathon, it's not a sprint, what can you and I take away from Jesus' example? What can we do to help our lives commit to God's work in our lives? What's it look like to commit to the forge? So go back to the story in Luke chapter 4. We're going to pick up again in verse 15. It says, he was full of the Spirit. He went back. It says he was teaching in their synagogues, and everyone praised him. He went to Nazareth, where he had been brought up. See, after God did something incredible in the life of Jesus, I think it's interesting that the very first place that Jesus goes is home. Like if I were to rewrite history, which is a good thing I don't, I would say, Jesus, God did something incredible in your life. Go to Jerusalem, go to Rome, go to the capital, tell everybody that you can about what God's doing in your life. But that's not where Jesus goes. See, Jesus went home. He went home because even though home is difficult, home is a place where great things can happen. See, I think it's interesting that Jesus, he asks you and I to do what he's willing to do himself. Someone once said that great leaders won't ask people to go where they aren't willing to go themselves. And Jesus, he went home. But let's be honest. Going home with our faith is difficult. Being at home is one of the hardest places to live out our faith. See, our family knows some of our greatest successes, but they've also had a front row seat to some of our greatest mistakes. They know the good things in our life. They know the things that we struggle with. They know the dirt, and it can be really intimidating. But even though our home might be the toughest place to live out our faith, home is the place where we can have the greatest story to tell of God's transforming grace. We actually see this play out in Mark chapter 5, where Jesus, he encounters a man who's possessed by a demon. And there's this dramatic healing. And this man's life and faith is forged. And this is what we find in verses 18 and 19 in Mark chapter 5. He goes to Jesus after this dramatic healing. As Jesus was getting into the boat, the man who had been demon-possessed begged to go with him. Jesus did not let him, but he said, "Go home to your own people and tell them how much the Lord has done for you and how he has had mercy on you." Jesus said, "Nope, I just did something incredible in your life. I want you to go home." Home is a place where God can do some incredible things. Jesus went home. He asked the man who was possessed by a demon, to go home, and I believe he's asking you to go home. I know it's scary and I know it's vulnerable, but there is an incredible opportunity at home to show God's transforming grace. I could tell you story after story of people who decided to bring their faith home. I know I'm standing here today because my dad, he decided to take his faith home. And I know many of you joining us online today that you have your faith because someone decided to go home. And still, I know there's others of you that have been home, that you've shown what God has done in your life, but still your parents, they don't believe. Your adult children haven't accepted the Lord yet, and that can be hard. Even when you look at Jesus' life in Scripture, his own family didn't accept him right away. They said he was crazy. They said he was out of his mind. See, the part of the forge process that is really, really important that we cannot miss this morning is that when God does something in our lives, we have to be willing to take our faith home. Let's look back at the story in Luke chapter 4 and see what Jesus continues to do at home. He says this in verse 16, "And on the Sabbath day, he went into the synagogue, as was his custom. He stood up to read, and the scroll of the prophet Isaiah was handed to him. Unrolling it, he found the place where it is written, 'The Spirit of the Lord is on me, because he has anointed me to proclaim good news to the poor. He sent me to proclaim freedom for the prisoners and recovery of sight for the blind, to set the oppressed free, to proclaim the year of the Lord's favor.' Then he rolled up the scroll, gave it back to the attendant, and sat down. The eyes of everyone in the synagogue were fastened on him. He began by saying to them, 'Today the scripture is fulfilled in your hearing.'" When Jesus goes home, he goes to this synagogue. It's like a church. It's where the religious people would gather. And what would happen is every week, a rabbi, or in this case, a guest teacher, Jesus, he would come up and he would teach. And someone handed him a scroll. So back then, they didn't have books that were bound, right? It wasn't all nice together in a Bible like we have today or on our phones. They handed him this huge scroll. And Jesus has this huge scroll, and he opens it up, and he finds the place that he wants to talk about. He found the place that his listeners back then needed to hear, and he found the place that I needed to hear, and today that you need to hear. He reads from Isaiah chapter 61. And just so you know, this was written 700 years before Jesus was even showing up on the scene on earth. And what happens is, this is no accident that Jesus chose to read this Old Testament passage. See, Jesus is making a bold statement about himself. He's declaring the reason he came to earth, the good news. And Jesus gives away his game plan for the rest of the time he's going to spend on earth. He says, this is what I'm going to do. So let's look at it again and see what Jesus says he's going to accomplish. Isaiah 61 says, "The Spirit of the Lord is on me." Jesus says this at the very beginning. Because the Spirit of the Lord is on me, I'm going to do some incredible things. If you remember last week, the Spirit of the Lord, after he was baptized, came upon Jesus, and then it sent him into the desert. And then it came out of the desert with power. The Spirit of the Lord is really important. We can never go anywhere that we've not asked or seen the Spirit of the Lord move. And so we need to be willing to at first say, the Spirit of God is going to lead me. And Jesus says this, and he says, here's what I'm going to do. I'm going to proclaim good news to the poor. Now, this word poor is important, and it had this idea of begging. It meant that people who were at their end of their rope, that were reaching out. I think of the story in Acts chapter 3. Peter and John are walking through the temple, and there's this man who is begging. He is obviously poor. He's asking for money. He can't work. He can't walk. He's an outcast. And what happens is he asks Peter and John for money. He says, I need help. He's begging. And he says, here's what I need. But Peter and John know that what he wants isn't what he's going to get. He's going to get what he needs. He wanted to fix a symptom, but Peter and John, through Jesus, addresses the real issue. The man is healed that day, and he stands up, and he walks, and he runs. The good news of Jesus is that he wants to address the real issues of our hearts, not just numb the symptoms. Jesus came to proclaim good news to the poor. He also says that he came to proclaim freedom for the prisoners. This idea of prisoners it means prisoner. It means someone who is chained up and they are in a jail cell. See, what Jesus says he's going to do is that I have come to bring freedom. I've come to unlock people from chains, to open the door and to proclaim freedom for their lives. But it's up to the person to stand up. It's up to the person to actually step out of the jail cell. Jesus says, I've come because I don't want you to be chained and weighed down by your failure or feeling of inadequacy. See, Jesus brings freedom. And then he continues and he says, I've come to give recovery of sight for the blind. What he is saying is that basically where there was darkness, I want to bring light. Where you are confused, I want to bring certainty. Jesus comes to give light and give people the ability to give me the ability to see the truth for what it really is. And then he says, I've also come to set the oppressed free. Now, this passage right here is really important. And what it originally meant in the language is that he's going to make whole those whose lives have been broken into pieces. That's what oppressed means, lives who have been broken into pieces. And he says, I have come to make it whole. See, the good news is that God wants to piece together the parts of your life that are out of control. Some of the decisions that you've made, some of the decisions that were made against you, God says, I know, and Jesus says, I know the pieces feel like they're scattered everywhere. But the good news is I've come, and I've come to restore you. I've come to restore your heart, to restore your mind. And all of these things that Jesus said he is going to do, nobody can do it for themselves. It's impossible. The prisoner cannot take their own chains off. The blind person cannot make themselves see. And like Humpty Dumpty, we ourselves cannot put our pieces of our lives back together again. Jesus says, I have come to do for you what you cannot do on your own. That is the good news. All of this, there's a lot right here, but what Jesus is simply saying is this: I have come to do for people what people cannot do for themselves. And the thing that ties this all together, that I've come to proclaim the year of the Lord's favor. Now, this idea of the Lord's favor, it goes back to Leviticus 25. And there was a rhythm that God set in place with his people in the Old Testament. In Leviticus 25, he talks about the year of Jubilee. And what that meant was that every 50 years, things would return back to their original owner. If land, animal, people were sold or given to somebody else, after 50 years, they had to go back to their original owner. When Jesus steps onto the scene, he says, I'm going to do for people what they can't do for themselves because it's time. It is time for the Creator to get his created back. There are people walking in darkness. There are people walking in chains, walking not with the Lord. And Jesus says, I've come to proclaim the year of the Lord's favor. I've come to get my people back. Today, you need to hear this. It is the year of the Lord's favor. It is the year of Jubilee that God has come to call his people back. That is the good news. And the way he does that is that he does it by doing things for people that they cannot do by themselves. This is what we're talking about. One of the things, the very first thing that we need to do when we need to live confidently in the Forge is to grab onto God's grace. Jesus says, if you want to live confident in what I'm trying to do in your life and what's ahead of you, you need to grab onto my grace because remember, I've come to do for you what you cannot do for yourself. The forging process is learning that we can't do it by ourselves. If you feel like you are less than, you have a God who is greater than your insecurities, greater than your shame, greater than your physical limitations, greater than your past. The biblical word for this is grace. And grace is getting something that you haven't earned or getting something you don't deserve. And I know that there are areas in your life where you feel inadequate. There's a gap between who you are and who you're supposed to be. And that gap is inadequacy, and it kills us. It chains us down, it blinds us. And Jesus says, but I've come to step into that gap to let you know that you're free, that I have what you need. Whatever seems insurmountable or impossible, grace gives you the forgiveness and power to accomplish it. And we grab onto that grace and hold on tight. When I was 22, so about 10 years ago, I had just graduated from college, and I was going to take my first ministry in Indiana. And I was going to leave my home in Topeka, Kansas. I was going to leave my family and my brothers. And we were bummed. We were sad. And so me and my brothers got together, and we said, let's do something that, what do brothers do as their last hurrah? And someone had the idea of, let's get a tattoo. And so we went to the tattoo shop, and we decided we're going to get a really cool tattoo a cross that's going to age so well. It did not age well. And with that cross, we're going to put Galatians 2:20 over the top of it because we like that verse. So I've heard it in Bible college. I've read it in the Bible. So I'm going to get it tattooed on my body. And we were so excited. All of us on our shoulders have this tattoo. I was like, yeah. I moved to Indiana. A week into moving there's a pool party. And I'm sitting there, and one of my friends, who wasn't my friend yet, his name was Pat. He's in his 60s, and Pat doesn't like tattoos. And he looked at me, looked at my tattoo, and he said, so what's Galatians 2:20 say? Word of advice. If you ever decide to get a tattoo on your body of a Bible verse, you should probably know what it is. In that moment, I froze, and I had no idea what it meant. Well, today, thank goodness, I know what Galatians 2:20 says, and it reminds me to hold on to grace. And I'm actually going to put it on the screen just in case I forget. Galatians 2:20, I've been crucified with Christ. It is no longer I who live, but Christ who lives in me. The life I live in the body, I live by faith in the Son of God who loved me and gave himself up for me. When we allow Jesus to forge our faith, we're promised that we don't have to do it by ourselves. We're actually promised, just like Galatians 2:20 says, that Christ actually comes in us, that he comes to live in us, and he does for us what we cannot do for ourselves. He actually enables us to begin to desire the things that God desires. It says that the Spirit in us, it begins to work and to think, to say, and to even do the things that are best for our lives. And it's important to know this, that God will never assign you a task without first giving you the grace to accomplish it. Don't miss that. God will never assign you a task without first giving you the grace to accomplish it. Through Jesus, you have the grace to be wise with your money. You have the grace to be single. Through Jesus, you have the grace to be the stepmom. You have the grace to be confident with where God has you right now. And through Jesus, you have the grace to show patience even when anger seems to take control. See, Jesus came to give you confidence, not in your own abilities, no, but in his grace. So grab onto it and don't let go. Another way that I believe that Jesus shows us how we can confidently live in the forge is, first you got to grab onto God's grace. Second, you need to step into your identity. And Cody said this last week, and you're going to hear it today, and I'm sure you're going to hear it for the weeks to come. But your identity is so important. We have to know that our identity has to be anchored in who you are in Christ. Because if your identity is not solid, the things of life, the storms, even the forge that God wants to take us through, it's gonna wreak havoc in our lives. We're gonna experience crisis after crisis. But if we allow our identity to be anchored in Christ, it changes everything. No longer will you struggle with the insecurity or the inadequacy that you once felt. But when you know who you are, you don't have to worry about what you're doing. Right before this story of Jesus reading in the synagogue, Jesus stepped into his identity when he stepped into the desert. This allowed him to be confident. And one of the reasons Jesus' life was marked with confidence is because he was confident in who he was. The reason that you're struggling today with confidence and accomplishing what's in front of you, to accomplish a job or to connect with a relationship, it may all stem from the fact that you're not confident in who you are. I stole this from my friend Jay. Jay has a lot of kids, and most of the kids have turned out pretty good. And so one time I was hanging out, and I decided Jay, what is the secret? What do you do with your kids? How did they turn out so good? And I learned a secret, and I started to implement it in my own life. And what that is when my son, and this is what Jay would do with his kids, when I pull up to the school with Mitt, when he gets out of my car, the last thing that I say to him is this: "Hey, Mitt, who are you?" And Mitt responds, "I'm a man of God." See, I want Mitt to remember before he steps, and Jay did this, he wanted his kids to remember that who they are is more important than what they do. And in school, when I hear stuff from Mitt, it's always what he does. Like, how did he do on a spelling test? How was he behaving in PE? And I just want him to know that who he is important, even more important than what he does. Because what he does, it will change. He'll go to second grade next year. He'll graduate. He'll become this. He'll become that. That will change. But who he is will not. And when he knows who he is, he doesn't have to worry about what he does. And my 7-year-old, he's really good at this. I ask him all the time, "Who are you?" He'll say, "Man of God," all the time. But can I be honest? 32-year-old Charlie, not so good at it. Like, I wish I did a better job of just staring into the mirror and saying, "Charlie, who are you?" And just answering, "I'm a man of God." Today, I need to ask, who are you? You are a man of God. You are a woman of God. You are God's creation. He chose you and he loves you. You are more than what you do. And Jesus, he stepped into his identity. Someone once said it this way: we can't look horizontally for what we need vertically. Our identity can only come from God, our creator. The creator can name the creation. Nothing else can tell us who we are. We need to get vertically what we can't get horizontally. And we can't get our identity from the things and the people around us. Stepping into your identity means you need to be reminded of who you are. This week, maybe you need to be reminded. So I'm going to ask you, I'm going to challenge you. Read Ephesians chapter 1 every day this week. It's a great way, a great reminder to remind yourself of who you are in Christ. Besides stepping into his identity, stating his purpose was really important for Jesus, especially when it came to confidently just living in the forge. State your purpose is so important. See, as soon as Jesus is confident in his identity, where do we find him? In Luke chapter 4, he's confident in his identity. He steps into a synagogue and he proclaims his purpose. He says out loud for people to hear, "Here's what I'm about." When you know who you are, you can be confident in what you need to do. And if you're struggling with what to do in any situation, please start with who you are, and God will allow and point to what you need to do. It's important to everyone to know their purpose. So I'm going to ask you, do you know your purpose? Do you know what you're about? Do you know what you're supposed to be doing in life? Like, I'm sure many of us could rattle off things we're not doing so well in life. Me too. But we all need to have clarity in what we're doing in life. We all need to have a target that we're going after. Everyone, I believe, has the same general, God-given purpose. Everybody. It's very general, but it's our purpose, it's our job. And if we get this simple truth, I believe it will change how you and I view our lives and view our purpose. Here's what I mean. Take a look at it this way. God's job is to judge the world. Jesus' job is to save the world, and people's job is to love the world. You go look at John chapter 3, and it's the famous passage on signs at WrestleMania. It's John 3:16. "For God so loved the world that he gave his only son," right? "That whoever believes in him shall not perish." That next verse, verse 17, it said, "God did not send Jesus in to condemn the world, to judge the world, but to save the world." See, God's job is to judge the world. It's not our job. It's not your job to point out people outside the church that are not living or voting or watching or doing the things that you think they should do. We're going to leave that up to God. And when we step into his role and his job and his purpose, things get unhealthy really fast. And then you look at Jesus' job. His job is to save the world. And I know that you want to help. I know you want to make decisions for the people closest to you, but you need to know this. You cannot save them. You cannot get them to stop drinking. You cannot get them to stop dating people who are unhealthy for them. You just can't. The only person that can save them is Jesus. He's the only one that can grab a hold of their mind and their heart and transform them. Your role is simply to love people. See, God's placed people on your path, and he says, hey, your purpose, your job, love them well. In the same way that we can't look horizontally for what we need, we can't wait vertically for what we're called to do horizontally. We can't wait vertically for what we're called to do horizontally. God has placed people in your path for a reason, a place and a people. And he says, I want you to love them. You don't need to judge them. You don't even need to save them. All you need to do is to love them. And so if our purpose is to love the world, maybe a better question for you and I is, how are you loving people? How are you doing at loving people? Maybe you hear this question and you have no idea how to answer it. I'd challenge you with this fact. God has placed you in a position right now to love people on purpose. It could be your family. It could be the people in your office, or maybe other guys or girls on your sports team. You have a place and a people to love. And just like Jesus, it's important to state your purpose out loud. It's not something that he tucked away and he kept to himself. You'll see throughout the gospel, Jesus is saying, I've come to do this. I've come to not be served, but to serve. I've come to give my life for people. I've come to seek and save that which was lost, to proclaim the year of the Lord's favor. Like he made it known over and over again. So I want to challenge you. If you discover your purpose, if you discover how you're loving people, would you make it known? I want you to write it down today or even this week. Write down your purpose, and I want you to tell some people. Tell your family, tell your best friend, whoever it needs to be, tell somebody. Maybe you're retired and you have some extra time on your hands. Your purpose, it might be to spend time with younger people because you've been where they're at and they need encouragement and love. Maybe you've been going to work and you've just been punching the clock. Maybe it's time to change the purpose. Maybe you need to commit to bringing joy in your workplace because it desperately needs it. What would it look like if you were to make that your focus and your purpose? If you're having a hard time coming up with something, I want to recommend a resource for you. It's called the Storyline Workbook by Donald Miller. The Storyline Workbook. You can actually find this on Amazon. I did this years ago, and it does an incredible job of outlining your story and God's purpose for you through the good things and the bad things, and you'll start to develop themes. And so if you need somewhere to start, check out that resource. It will help you know how you're wired to live and to live with purpose. So Jesus, he lived confidently. He was able to grab onto God's grace. He was able to step into his identity, and he stated his purpose. That's what a forged faith looks like. And I know you and we're not the only ones who feel inadequate. Did you know that even Jesus himself felt inadequate? There were times in his life where he was so tired, he felt like he couldn't keep going. There were moments in scripture that you'll read that he said, all right, everyone just get away from me, get in a boat, I'm gonna stay here. Or he got up early and he went to a quiet place to just pray and just to be by himself. And then there was this moment at the end of his life. It was actually the night before he died. And he's in the garden and he knows his time is coming because he knows his purpose. He knows that he's getting ready to give his life, that he is going to die a death that is going to be painful, that's going to be excruciating, and he's going to experience separation from his heavenly Father. And in that moment, he feels inadequate. We actually get a glimpse at his prayer. See, what he says, he prays and he says, Father God, if you are willing, will you take this cup from me? What he is saying is that, God, what you have in front of me, I don't want to do. I don't feel equipped. I don't feel confident. But you know what Jesus does? He submits his life to the Father. He places his life in his Father's hands to be molded and to be used. Then we're told immediately that an angel comes to Jesus and it strengthens him. Like, I don't believe he gave Jesus a testosterone shot and said, all right, let's do this, some vitamin D. That's not what happened. I believe what happened was the angel came to Jesus, and I think they talked about, or he was reminded of what we talked about this morning. I really believe that the angel filled Jesus with courage by reminding him of what we talked about. He said, Jesus, grab on to God for the grace to give him strength. In that moment, Jesus remembered his identity as God's son, and Jesus knew his purpose as the world's rescuer. And he got up from that moment. He was arrested, put on trial, beaten, and eventually he was crucified. He, with confidence, walked through one of the most horrific deaths possible. And how could he do it? Because he allowed his faith to be molded and then to be used. Because Jesus was filled with confidence, he went on to change the entire world. Jesus changed my life, and whether you know it or not, he will change your life as well. What would happen today in your life if you allowed God to fill you with confidence? What would happen to your family, your marriage, if you began to rely on God's grace? How would your life change and look different if you stepped into the identity that God has given you instead of relying on the title on your business card? Here's what will happen. You'll begin to walk a confident faith. You'll begin to walk a life that is hard-pressed on every side, but not crushed. A life that's perplexed, but not despaired. A life that's persecuted, but not abandoned. Maybe struck down, but not destroyed. You begin to live a life that is forged. You begin to live a life and a faith that has been tested and molded, and God says, I'm ready to use you. Earlier, Jesus said in Luke 4, he starts with, the Spirit of the Lord is upon me to proclaim good news. Later in Jesus' life, like we just talked about, when he was dying on the cross, do you know what he said? He said, Father, into your hands I commit my spirit. God gave him his spirit and used him in ministry, and then Jesus gave it up. And then Jesus came back. The good news of all this is that Jesus gave us life again through his resurrection, right? Don't miss that part. And when he was walking around with his disciples for 40 days in the church, he looked at them, and before he went up to heaven, he said this, I now give you my spirit. The same spirit that walked with Jesus, the same spirit that Jesus gave up on the cross for me and you, he gives out to me and you, and he says, I want you to proclaim the year of the Lord's favor. It's time to bring back what was once the Lord's. And if you're watching us today and you have never given your life to the Lord, if you've never given your life to say, I want what you have for me, today's the day. It is the year of the Lord's favor. Maybe you've been walking with the Lord for a long time. I want to encourage you to remember your identity. I want you to remember that you can't do this life on your own, that you need to grab onto God's grace because he will fill in the gaps. And don't forget your purpose. The same purpose of Jesus declaring the year of the Lord's favor is the same purpose that we get to do today. I'm going to pray in just a few moments here, and then we're going to continue with worship. And then Brett and Connor, they're going to lead us through a time of prayer. And I pray during that time that you allow God to stir some stuff in your heart and in your mind. Because when you allow God to mold and use you, it is just one of the most incredible feelings to know that your life is forged. Let's pray. God, we love you, and we are so grateful that today we get to open up your word and we get the example of Jesus. We not only get his example, but we also get the encouragement, God, that what you have for our life is important, that what you have for our life is not insignificant, that we don't need to walk in insecurity or inadequacies, God, but you give us exactly what we need. God, would you allow us to be a people, no matter where we are gathering in our homes or with other people, God, would you fill us up with your spirit, knowing that we need you. God, we are so grateful for Jesus, and we pray this all in his name. Amen.
Let's respond together and sing this morning. Can't go back to the beginning. Can't control what tomorrow will bring. But I know here in the middle is the place where you promised to be. I'm not enough unless you come. Will you meet me here again? 'Cause all I want is all you are. Will you meet me here again? As I walk now through the valley, let your love rise above every fear, like the sun shaping the shadows. It's in my weakness your glory appears. 'Cause all I want is all you are. Will you meet me here again? We sing again that I'm not enough unless you come. Will you meet me here again? 'Cause all I want is all you are. Will you meet me here again? Whoa, in the middle of my brokenness, you are with me, God. You never leave us. We trust in you alone. Come on, we remind ourselves of this truth today. Then not for a minute was I forsaken. The Lord is in this place. The Lord is in this place. So come, Holy Spirit, dry bones awaken. The Lord is in this place. Yes, the Lord is in this place. And not for a minute was I forsaken. The Lord is in this place. Yes, the Lord is in this place. Come, Holy Spirit, dry bones awaken. The Lord is in this place. The Lord is in this place. Oh,
Hey, Charlie, thanks so much for your message. I know people are commenting. I know we here are talking. Man, it's been so good and so practical. I know in my own life there's been so many moments where I felt inadequate and didn't know what the next step was. And I love that, the easy step, and I think is often most overlooked, is to love people, and that our response is because of our grace, because of the grace that has been given us, we get to love people. And so I'm really excited, and we're going to worship here in a moment. And before we do, we want to ask you a couple questions for you to reflect on out of the message today. Because I think it's really important for us to take some time and to pray. And if you're at home and you want to take some communion, we encourage you to do so with your family. But more than anything, to just spend some time with God asking these two questions. The first one is this: where in your life do you feel the most inadequate, maybe the least equipped, and need God's grace, right? Like what area specifically in your life this week or this year do you feel the most inadequate or the least equipped and in need of God's grace? I want you to wrestle with that, and we're going to give you some time during the next song to reflect. Brett, what's our other question?
Yeah, something I want to challenge you all with, and something I think that we're here going to challenge with is, Charlie said, God has given you a place and a people to love. And I just want to ask you guys to ask God to just, for clarity and desire to love the people in your path, because I think that is something we're seeing all over, especially in today's just age and everything. Who are we loving, and how, what's that going to look like?
Yeah, and it's an extremely good conversation to have right now, as we come, into a new year, and as work, picks back up and life goes back to normal, and especially this week with us being out of school all week, man, how do we love those right in front of us?
Yeah.
The people that you love the most may be the hardest for you to love this week, honestly, because you're sick and tired of being locked up and cooped up with them. But what does that look like? Because I think in our inadequacies, we find ourselves looking least like Jesus because we allow those to dictate who we are rather than who God says we are.
Yeah.
And so we want to challenge you to wrestle with that and pray through and think through that as we worship to this next song. And if you feel bold enough, would you comment below, man, what is that area in your life? And who are those people that God is calling you to love right in front of you? Let's worship, and we'll see you here in a moment.
In the darkness we were waiting, without hope, without light, till from heaven you came running. There was mercy in your eyes to fulfill the law and prophets. To a virgin came the word, from a throne of endless glory to a cradle in the dirt. Praise the Father, praise the Son, praise the Spirit, three in one. God of glory, majesty, praise forever to the King of Kings. To reveal the kingdom coming and to reconcile the lost, to redeem the whole creation. You did not despise the cross, for even in your suffering you saw to the other side, knowing this was our salvation. Jesus, for our sake you died. Praise the Father, praise the Son, praise the Spirit, three in one. God of glory, majesty, praise forever to the King of Kings. In the morning that you rose, all of heaven held its breath, till the storm was moved for good, for the Lamb had conquered death. And the dead rose from their tomb, and the angels stood in awe, for the souls of all who'd come to the Father are restored. And the church of Christ was born. There the Spirit lit the flame. Now this gospel's through the bold, shall not kneel, shall not fade. By His blood and in His name, in His freedom I am free. For the love of Jesus Christ, who has resurrected me. And praise the Father, praise the Son, praise the Spirit, three in one. God of glory, majesty, praise forever to the King of Kings. Praise forever to the King of Kings.
Hey, I appreciate you guys being so intentional and being vulnerable and willing to share. I know that's not easy, but man, what a unique experience that we have as a church to get to process and do this thing together. And we know this, that we're all in the same boat. None of us have arrived, right? None of us are the perfect parents or the perfect people, and we all need grace, and we all need to be better at loving people who are right in front of us, and not letting our inadequacies disqualify us from the very things that God has for us. And so we love you guys so much. I would encourage you, keep sharing those things. If talk to somebody this week, share your story, because in light of that, this is where freedom happens, right? And this is where we begin to live life authentically with others. And we love that. And so I appreciate you guys sharing. Nate, thanks for jumping in and sharing that, man. Seriously, it's not easy to be vulnerable. And so seriously, thank you so much. We're glad to be here with you this morning. It's been an amazing morning, 1 degree morning with your number one online team, right?
Yeah,
Is that a
absolutely.
good
Yeah,
catchline,
yeah.
catchphrase?
That was a good
Awesome.
one. Good.
Yeah. Well, hey, we love you guys seriously so much, and we're thankful to get to do this with you again another week. We'll see you soon.